Hello, BookTube. It's Friday. I thought I'd go through some more of my back issues, my comic book collection, since I don't have new issues to show you. Although I noticed that I'm just grabbing these a handful at a time from a back issue box. And I noticed that as I'm doing this, that some of these issues are fairly new. They're from just a few years ago, a couple of years ago, even last year. So there'll be those mixed in, but they won't make a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of progressional sense. I am determined. I've had a number of comic book purists email me in the course of watching these videos and say, boy, it's great to see these things. I had one person say, I held up an issue of, I think it was Thor, I had one person email and say, I've never seen that except in a plastic bag hanging on the wall of my comic shop for $200. So for you to just have it in a pile of comics is kind of amazing. That person sarcastically said that it's kind of odd that a 28-year-old would have such a collection. Not sure what was being insinuated there. Anyway, the first one that we'll look at here is one of those. It is an example of that. This is, I don't know if I'm going to be able to spot the year on this, but this is fairly recent. This was just a couple of years ago. It's Justice League, and I got it mainly for Jorge Jimenez, the artist. This is Justice League number 2. That's a Jorge Jimenez cover, but let me get you a piece of his art. His artwork is this. His run on Justice League was just incredible. Just astonishing work, in detail, in action, everything, in perspective. This is an artist who gets considerably better as he goes along, and this is a perfect example of that. I'm sure that somewhere or another, he's left the Justice League since now, but I'm sure that his run on Justice League will be collected at some point, and that is a collection that I would want, because this is amazingly good stuff. And I have other issues from his run somewhere. Okay, all right. Well, then we get to Thor, the aforementioned Thor. This is Thor number 154 and 157. 2 issues in the 4-part storyline where Thor fights the Mangog, who has the strength of, as he continues to tell us, a billion beings. He has the strength of a billion beings. And this is also a famous moment in Stan Lee comics where Thor talks with a group of hippies. He talks with a group of hippies, and he gives them a Stan Lee style lecture about how they're wasting their lives. I thought, right before he takes off and leaves them, Thor gives them a lecture. "'Tis not by dropping out, but by plunging into the maelstrom of life itself, that thou shalt find thy wisdom. There be causes to espouse, there be battles to be won, there be glory and grandeur all about thee, if thou wilt but see. Aye, there be time enow for thee to disavow thy heritage. Yea, thou mayest drop out for e'er, once Hela herself hath come for thee. But just so long as life endures, thou must live it to the full, else thou be unworthy of the title man." And then, Thor is hanging around on Earth for now, but eventually he goes to Asgard because he has to face the Mangog. And it's a great story. I absolutely love it. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but I love it. Okay, this is Conan number 0. Dark Horse Comics got the rights a long time ago to do Robert E. Howard's Conan. And I didn't know what to think of it. I was a huge fan of Marvel Comics, Conan the Barbarian, and the Savage Sword of Conan when they had the rights. And then when it went to Dark Horse, I had no idea what to think. I thought, Dark Horse usually has subpar artists, and the writing will be all tangled and messy. They won't get Conan. And issue number 0 was only 25 cents, and I was dead wrong. This is Kurt Busiek with art by Cary Nord, and I was blown away by this 0 issue. So I kept the individual issue, even though this has been collected in a number of Conan editions that I have now. It's in the future. It takes place still in ancient days, but in the future, when an exalted highness, a pampered prince, is being led through a devastated country land. When he and his men and his advisor encounter a looted storehold, and there's a statue, a derelict statue, just sort of sitting there. And the prince says, "What have we here?" And his visor is not happy. His vizier is, this statue, this man, who was he? A general or? And his advisor says, "Perhaps some local chieftain or minor king, exalted one, a blood-handed brute long dead, nothing of concern." And the prince says, no, this one is different somehow. The other carvings and portraits we have found show petrified god kings, silk-draped martinets in love with their own gaze. This man, he looks rough, dangerous, real. Something about his expression, his eyes. Look at the base. There's an inscription. Can you decipher these runes, Wazir? What does it say? His advisor looks at the base of the inscription and says, his name was Conan, a peasant's name, common as mud. And the runes are eroded in the language crude, but if I make them out correctly, the inscription reads, in our hour of darkness, when serpents strike, he shall return. I wonder, did he? Asked the prince. Look at the beautiful Carrie Nord artwork. His wazir says, I assure you, my prince, it is arrant nonsense, a standard legend. These primitive tribes, they made of every bandit leader a chief, every chieftain a king, every king a god. This Conan was doubtless just some bestial strongman who briefly ruled over terrified peasants through fear and the blade. But the prince isn't listening. He's still staring at the inscription, saying, they respected him. They longed for his return. And then finally he says, I want to know more about him. And that it forces his advisor to go and research, to find out what there is to know about this Conan. And I was thinking, okay, this is a little roundabout way to get to it, but it's interesting. I hope the whole thing's not in flashback. I had no way of knowing. I did not predict what Busiek was leading up to. He's leading up to, of course, later on in the beginning, the advisor comes back to this chieftain and with his report. He has a scroll. He has assembled the report about this Conan. And the prince says, have you failed in your task? And he says, no, there are masses of scrolls to hunt through. Those called Nemedians had a passion for record keeping. He says, it is still superstitious nonsense, but in keeping with your wishes, I had the scribes prepare an account. This is based on what we uncovered about this Conan thus far. And then what do we get? No, O Prince. Any Conan fan is shivering right now. No, O Prince. This is the Prince. Wonderful. Between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities and the years of the rise of the sons of Arius, there was an age undreamed of, when shining kingdoms lay spread across the world like blue mantles beneath the stars. Numidia, Ophir, Berinthia, Hyperia, Zamora with its dark-haired women and towers of spider-haunted mystery, Zingara with its chivalry, Koth that bordered the pastoral lands of Shem, Stygia with its shadow-guarded tombs, Hyrcania whose riders wore steel and silk and gold. But the proudest kingdom in the world was Aquilonia, reigning supreme in the dreaming west. Look at that. Look at how beautiful that is. Hither came Conan the Cimmerian. He's just riding out of the woods. Black-haired, sullen-eyed, sword in hand, a thief, a reaver, a slayer, with gigantic melancholies and gigantic mirth, to tread the jeweled thrones of the earth beneath his sandaled feet. That's it. This is just a prologue. That's all. And it's in every Dark Horse reprint. And I loved it so much that I kept the original issue because it was so well done. Okay, then we go back to Thor. This should be with those other issues. This is the conclusion of the Mangog story, where it looks like the Mangog is going to succeed. He is, and here Thor gives another speech. Only this time it's not to teenagers. This time it's to his fellow gods, because the Mangog is winning. He's driving all before them, and Thor says, "Thee nay, are we not warriors born? Are we not Asgardians all? Are we not akin to gods? Not for such as we, the pale cast of surrender. Whilst we live, we fight, and as we dare, so shall we win." Great Jack Kirby artwork here. Okay, then we have another. This is more Thor. This is going to get us through it nice and quick. This is Steve Englehart who wrote this, and it's John Buscema artwork, and he is inked by Tony DeZungo, who's not always that great at inking him. I love this issue anyway. This is Thor Annual number 5, where Olympus and Asgard go to war. Thor and Odin Zeus and Odin go to war, and Thor and Hercules have to fight. And look at this. Look at that. That is just incredible. Even Tony DeZungo can't ruin something like that. Okay, we're still with Thor. This is Thor number 190. This is the conclusion to the coda of a story of the Infinity Saga that I just love. The bad guy, Infinity, has been defeated, and all is well. But Hela, the goddess of death, has decided to take the life of Thor. It's forfeit for her. And at the last minute, Odin summons Sif, the goddess Sif, to plead with Hela for Thor, who is growing older and older as she speaks. She says, Hela, though thou art be queen of death, thou art a woman too. Surely love has touched thine heart. Hela says, why speakest thou to me of love? And Sif says, 'tis all I know, 'tis all there be. Without it life hath no meaning and no joy. Thou couldst still save the dying Thor. Thou must, O Hela. Or if my words should not move thee, this last request I make of thee, do but spare the mighty Thor, and take Sif's life in forfeit. And Hela says, thou wouldst die to save thy true beloved? Sif asked if Hela had ever known love, and now I answer nay. But at last I do know what it doth mean. Not even death may crush it. And Hela is crying. She's crying just a little. I've read this issue many, many times. Mine is falling apart. Fortunately, I have this in a couple of collections, so these individual issues I don't need anymore. Okay, and same with these. These are just more issues of Thor. We've seen these already. I got Epic Collections, full color reprints that collect all of these, so I don't need these issues anymore. Oh, man. All right, let's go back to the halcyon days of the 1980s. Am I right? The 1980s. Yes, 1983. This is Atari Force. Marvel got the toy rights to a video game called Atari Force and decided to make a comic book out of it as well. And I wouldn't have cared. I don't care about video games at all. But it's drawn by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. I've praised his artwork on this channel many, many times. He's fantastic. He's just incredible. So as long as he was going to draw it, I was going to get it. And it turned out to be really good. As an adaptation, it was really enjoyable. Oh my, oh goodness gracious. All right, yeah, we are going to go through this fairly quickly. Good. Because these next gajillion issues are the Legion of Superheroes. In many different incarnations. Let's see here. Let's see if I can separate them all. Here are some from the 1990s. Just a run of Legion issues from the 1990s. I think I got all these in Vermont. Then you've got a run from earlier than that. This is the 5 Years Later saga by Keith Giffen, which takes place in the future of the future team, the Legion of Superheroes. And several of these issues have letters from yours truly. Once I got over the shock of what Keith Giffen had done, moving the whole team 5 years in the future and darkening the Legion world, darkening everything so the Legionnaires could die, they could be tortured or mutilated. Once I got over the shock of that, I just loved the storytelling that Giffen was doing, so I started writing approving letters. Also wrote approving letters to Atari Force. So somehow, if you could collect those early 10 issues of Atari Force, you might find a letter or two from me. And then later Legion issues. This is from the very end of the run of the Legion. This is 16 and 23. And 23, if I remember correctly, is right near the end of everything. It's right near the... Yes, in fact, it is the end of everything, where an Earth official tells the Legion of Superheroes that she's disbanding the team, and that was kind of that. So there is a new Legion. There is a Legion that is being published right now, and I haven't had access to issues because my comic shops haven't been open. I haven't particularly loved it, but I will buy and read almost any Legion comic. These were great. This final gasp of the classic Legion was great, as you would expect, since it was written by Paul Levitz, who's great. He is a great Legion author. So, okay, all right. Then we go back. This is going to be the 80s, 1979. Roy Thomas, John Buscema. This is the Marvel run on Conan the Barbarian. This is a standalone issue that's loosely adapted from a poem by Robert E. Howard about a mysterious woman who just appears in the ocean and seems to be luring members of Conan's crew to their death. And it's a perfect example in my mind of the inventive ways that Roy Thomas went at the Conan oeuvre, went at the Conan backstory. He could mine stories out of anything at all. A fragment, a story that wasn't about Conan, a bit of a poem, and make a really good... This is a terrific standalone issue. And, I kept it because I had no idea that Conan would ever be collected. I'm sure that this is in one of the omnibus volumes that Marvel is bringing out right now. I'm just not sure what surrounds it. I probably do want the first 2 or 3 omnibus volumes of the Conan the Barbarian Marvel years. They're probably $50 each online now. I should look around for them because there really isn't anything bad on either side of this issue. Oh my! All right, talk about a bullseye. This is from 1973, and this is rather inevitable: Superman versus the Abominable Snowman, and that is a great Nick Cardy cover. It turns out that there's an elaborately complicated Elliot Magan story in here about this creature, and the way that Superman saves the day at the end is pure Elliot Magan, where it's so conditional that you can think of 20 stories that would disrupt it. He had to churn these things out. He was writing a lot, but and I love these stories anyway. They are what comics used to be for me. There was no super serious. Back when I was reading these things, there were no super serious comic books at all. Marvel was starting to become that way with Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four. First Spider-Man, where Peter Parker's roommate, Harry Osborn, becomes a drug addict and almost kills himself by being high as a kite. And then later, a little bit later than that, I don't remember who the writer was, but where Reed Richards and Sue Richards get divorced. And those sorts of real world things, those heavy material, was Stewart campus riots in Spider-Man, were starting to appear in Marvel, but DC was still largely carefree. And so a silly issue where Superman fights a creature that is the Abominable Snowman and then comes up with a ridiculous way to solve things at the end didn't bother me at all. I didn't know any better. Okay, then we get a great issue of Doctor Strange. This is by Steve Englehart. And Steve Englehart, I've mentioned him in these comic book videos before. He can be really bad, but he can also be really good. You have to get him in a story with a character that he really likes, and he's given it a little bit of free reign. And this is a storyline he did for Doctor Strange. This is Doctor Strange number 13 with great artwork by Gene Colan. Just beautiful artwork by Gene Colan. Just look at how gorgeous that is. Just incredible. In which, I don't want to give it away in case you haven't encountered it, but there's a character on the cover here. Eternity is his name. He is the embodiment of all that is, the embodiment of reality in Marvel Comics. And he decides to destroy the world. He decides to destroy the Earth. And Doctor Strange survives because he has, due to a gimmick from an earlier issue, he survives. And the conclusions that Steve Englehart comes to at the end of this issue is amazing for how he gets this character out of the fact that the whole world has been destroyed. A terrific reading experience. All right, okay. Well, this next one is another Thor annual. This is by Roy Thomas, and it's once again drawn by John Buscema, and once again inked by Tony DeZungo. It's clearly meant to be a sort of a follow-up to King Size Annual number 5, where Olympus fights Asgard, because this is Thor goes to the Iliad, Thunder over Troy, where Thor goes to the Trojan battlefield, and it gives Roy Thomas the chance to just tell the Iliad with gods involved, and also with Thor involved. And there comes a point at the climax of the issue where Thor is fighting, but this time he's not fighting Hercules, he's fighting Zeus. He's fighting Hercules' father, which should be no contest, and largely is. This is the issue where Roy Thomas introduces into continuity the fact, let me see if I can find it for you here, the fact that Zeus is among the beings who can command Thor's hammer, who can just take it over. Really, Thor should have no more of a chance against Zeus than he should against his own father, Odin, and he doesn't in this issue. I really enjoyed it. Of course, I'm going to enjoy any variation on the Iliad story. But anyway, that is our batch of comics. We were helped because a lot of these are the same things. There's a lot of Thor, there's a lot of Legion. But we'll see what we encounter next time. Could be an infinite variety. I have a lot more of these to do. So I'll wrap this up, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.